Welcome to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. I'm Dr. Amy Cooper Smith, a doctorate prepared nurse practitioner, and this show is about empowering you to live a radiant, healthy, and balanced life. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Susanne Eden, teacher, author, consultant, and staff developer. Now 87 still?
Yes, soon to be 88. Well, I've got a few more months before I'm 88.
So, still 87, she's going to share her story of healing and personal transformation as she wrote in her book, Healing from the Inside Living Fully as You Age. So, welcome and thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Amy, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to connect with different audiences and speak to you about something that is I'm still very passionate about.
Yes. So, we talk a lot on this show about healthy aging, and you have some experience with that. So, so what inspired you to write your book to share your experience?
Well, it really is a culmination of many years of struggling with mainstream medicine and then making the choice of reaching beyond mainstream medicine. I'd always been a holistic thinker, and it's a mystery to me why I let a piecemeal form of medical attention and treatment take over my life like it did. Because our whole medical system today in the Western world is a system that focuses on the body as if it's a collection of parts.
Mm-hmm.
And I look on the body and as a holistic system, a magical phenomenal system of interconnections and interdependence and intercommunication. So my book, in many ways, is a guide to holistic healing. I don't ever suggest disregarding the wonderful advances that science has given us in medicine. In fact, in my book, I use the example of diabetes, which is a escalating quite dramatically in the population. In my father's time, I mean, I'm 87, so we're going back to the 40s and the 50s. My father's treatment for diabetes was a hypodermic style
Right.
type of needle, and peeing on a stick was how you look for what your sugars were doing. I look at the insulin, the pump that I have now, and the method, the glucometer, which measures the sugars. I wear one on my body all the time. There's no comparison. That is really a miraculous development. And I look at some of the surgeries. A very close friend of mine's son developed a very rare form of cancer started in his elbow, eventually went through his whole body, but when they reconstructed his elbow completely, gave him a new elbow. I mean, this is amazing. So we need, but having said that, it has led to this form of medical treatment where each part is handled separately as you would a car. Take out this piece and stick in another, and away you go. It's not that simple. So, how did I write this book? How did I come to write the book? When I started searching, the reality for me was I was always a very high energy person. I speak of myself as going off in all directions, and suddenly, not suddenly, but over time, health issues were becoming more and more limiting for me. And finally, I took early retirement from my position at the university to focus on my health. And that meant at that time for me, which is nearly 30 years ago now, it meant mainstream medicine. So I was taking all these pharmaceuticals, getting worse and worse and worse. I came to a point where I just said, stop, I cannot do this. And I was told if I went off the medications that my body would shut down and I would die. That was the bottom line. And I still said, I'm not doing it.
So you took a
So,
big leap of faith.
oh, I did. I did. And I really don't know how I had the courage, but I do know because I had come to the end of living such a diminished life. And so it took me over a year. It was very, very difficult. But anyway, eventually I did. And then I began to look at how to extend the treatments that were not so invasive and to get back to a holistic view of looking at healing rather than looking for a cure. You know, there's a
That's so
very big,
wonderful.
yeah, there's a very big difference. And that's our mistake. We think if I could just cure this pain in my hip. It's interesting to me right now that I'm going through quite an episode with pain through my lower back and hip. And what the naturopathic doctor says to me, what the mainstream doctor said was, I might need a hip replacement. What the naturopathic doctor says is we've got to do something about the neuropathy in your feet, which is, by the way, the only side effect I have after nearly 40 years with diabetes because I've looked after myself. But she connected the pain in the hip with the way I'm walking and what that's doing to the back, and the way I'm walking is related to my spinal stenosis, which is quite bad. So it's a whole different way of looking at health and wellness and getting better. And I don't say this lightly, but I am in better health today than I was 30 years ago.
That is
And
amazing.
and that's what my book describes, how I got there. But when I first started, what I found was there was a lot of stuff starting to come out 30 some years ago about the mind body connection. And it's really very common now. But very, very few talk about the mind, the body, and the spirit. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't want to get into that. I come from a religious background, but I have moved into a whole different space in my belief system and in how I live my life. But we can't deny that whether we think of the spirit as religious spirituality, what they meant in old time religion, or whether we look at the spirit as the deepest and best of who we are. That's where love and imagination and creativity and all the best of self resides. And we have to bring the whole three pieces together. I talk about the fractured self. You know, we've been conditioned in my lifetime so much away from believing that there is an organic spirituality, if you will, within us. That deep part that makes us the best of being human. So I had quite a struggle to find my way. It took me a long, long time to get into a truly holistic way of managing my life. And when the pandemic came, I was isolated. I was still living in my home. And so it became very difficult, you know, and I thought I have to do something that keeps my mind going. And I really felt that I could offer, based on my own stories and my relationship to other people, some help and some support to people who are looking for something beyond just a superficial kind of healing and curing.
So
So,
let's go back 30 years ago when
yes,
people weren't talking about this stuff yet, or at
no,
least not much.
not
How
much.
how did you know where to start?
Well, I've always been a holistic thinker. I've always believed in that. And so I go way, way back into the 60s to a wonderful book that was written by Marilyn Ferguson on holistic health. Long before people were talking about this, she was involved in a conference that brought people from all over the globe together who were looking for a new way to imagine health and healing. And I love her book. I have it on my shelf behind me. I read it and reread it many times over. So I was already thinking that way. But what I was so suspect of because of the way society treats alternatives to conventional medicine, I was very suspicious of anything that was kind of woof, woof, woof,
A little out there.
new age woo woo, right? So I decided once I got off this awful thing of all these pharmaceuticals that were killing me and making me have such brain fog. I couldn't even tell you my name if you asked me fast, right? And so I looked around and I knew a lot of people who were doing yoga. I've never been good at yoga. I love the concept of yoga, but my body was too damaged. I couldn't do stuff. But I could do massage. So I started with massage, and this is where I'm going to say there is something guiding us from within that we have lost again touch with. Because without any kind of, brilliant thinking or anything like that, I got a massage therapist who actually had a lot of experience with energy healing. And so once I started massage, there was no question it helped with the physical symptoms. I had relief that I hadn't had for a long time. But it wasn't, I came to understand it wasn't deep enough. And so one day she said to me, I have done all I can for you, but that's not what you need. You need something much deeper than what I can offer. And she put me on to network spinal analysis, which is a form of energy healing done by chiropractors. And when I went the first few times, I was so skeptical. I thought, what is this? The hands were moving over my body, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what is this? But before any length of time had gone by, like maybe 4 sessions, I could feel a difference. And I'm very observant of others. And I was watching people who were going through the same treatment and thinking, what's going on? And I started talking and making friends with a lot of the people who were coming to the clinic. And their stories amazed me. And then only about maybe 6 or 7 sessions into it, my husband and I were going to Charleston for a holiday in South Carolina. And when we got out of the car, we'd had a very long drive. When we got out of the car, I was helping my husband unload things and get it into the cottage that we had rented. And he said to me, do you realize how much better you're walking? And not only that, but there, for a number of years before that, if I went that far, I wouldn't be able to move. And here I was bringing things out of the car and doing all that.
Carrying heavy stuff.
So not scientific evidence, but real evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not evidence that has to be put through the lens of a very narrow set of criteria. But what I came in my own studies, apart from health and my studies doing my doctorate, was the qualitative data, which is very different than the quantitative, So that's another whole day's discussion. But I got into all of that stuff. And I had been thinking this way. As I say, I did my doctoral studies years before this, using a qualitative method of investigation. And there wasn't a professor at University of Toronto who could help me design it. I had a big time figuring it out. But what I was studying, children's play, the connection between children's play and academic learning, you can't put through that narrow lens. So
Oh, that sounds
those are the
fascinating.
background, and that was the type of thing. So when I wrote my book, I'm thinking, like, people shouldn't have to look so far. I would find little bits and pieces all over the place, but I wasn't finding anything that gave me a pathway. And so that's what I've done with my book. And I have, in every chapter, it ends with something called taking action. And so it's not, often we will read an inspirational book and we think, oh, isn't that wonderful? And I'm going to do this, but we don't, because we don't really know where to start. So that's what I've done with that. I've kind of gone through the process, through the taking action. And in fact, I'm right now just finishing up a book, supplements to my book that are going to be the transformational journals, where I have outlined step. It isn't step by step, because it isn't a recipe, it's a process. And that's again what we don't understand. We go looking for a recipe. Tell me what to do, number one, and then I'll do that, and then I can check that off. No, it's the most interesting thing. It's a process. Everything's working together. People are dropping in that you have no idea about. Like I'm saying with that massage therapist, I wasn't setting out to find somebody who knew anything about energy healing. I don't think I'd even heard the term. I,
And
I
I
have.
can't wait to hear more about that. But we're going to pause for a break from our sponsor. And don't go anywhere, everyone, because we're going to get into this again. But you're listening to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Energize and Revitalize with Dr. Amy. I'm Dr. Amy Cooper Smith, and my guest today is Susanne Eden, the author of Healing from the Inside, Living Fully as You Age. So many people that I've encountered are afraid of aging. They'll say, don't get old. And I'll say, well, what's the alternative? I think I have to. So I think, you mentioned part of your inspiration for writing your book was to give people a guide, to say, this is how you can do it, and really be true to yourself as you're aging.
Well, I say in the book that the senior years are the last shot you have to become truly who you are meant to be. And that is really the heart of the book. We go through life and there are so many demands on us. I talk about living on autopilot. I mean, it's just like somebody winds us up every morning and we run here and we run there and we do this and we do that. And this child needs this and this grandmother needs this and I need that. And we're looking after everybody else's needs but our own. And when we come into these senior years, again, we are so conditioned to believe that it's all downhill from here. And all you have to do is think about the burgeoning industry of anti-aging products. Oh my God, we must not look old at any cost. Well, I will quote a friend of mine who was the editor-in-chief of Chatelaine magazine for many years, Fidel Maynard, saying to me one day, I don't give a damn about these wrinkles. I earned every one of them.
They tell a story.
They are my story. And I must tell you, I didn't always think that. When I turned 60, I was sure it was over. And I took early retirement. Who am I now? I'm not that person who was being invited to go and speak here and travel there and do this and that. Here's me sitting at home with all these aches and pains. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what a diminished life, right? And I am so grateful that I found this path and that I was given the courage to do what I needed to do to get where I am. It is nothing short of miraculous. And I will tell you that at every step of the way, when I stopped struggling, we think we have to control things. We think it's all up to us. I've got to find this thing. No, it isn't that. It's when I have the motto, trust the journey. It's when we trust that there is a power beyond which we could not even begin to imagine that guides us. And I could spend 2 hours telling you of people that at different points of time and events at different points of time that have kept me on this path to healing and to personal healing. For me is personal transformation. That's what healing is. It's bringing the fractured self back together into a whole. It's acting and thinking and believing in a way that heals our physical. I don't know if you
Absolutely.
understand
You
that.
mentioned you started with a more physical treatment of massage,
Yeah.
but then realized that while it was good, that you needed to kind of
It was
look.
only, it didn't go deep enough.
Yeah.
And I knew that. I mean, when I talk about that, the way we know that is that healing doesn't touch the sense that I've missed something. There's something I'm meant to be doing. I say in my book, we were not given purpose to live only half our lives with purpose. We have purpose till we draw our last breath. And I have some beautiful stories in my book about that. Um, our purpose changes. What we can do changes, but I talk about purpose in this, well, throughout life as a two-sided coin. One side is using all the gifts and talents and experiences we've been given to become the best person we can. Why were you given certain package of things in your life kit and me a whole different one? And I look at myself particularly because I'm coming so late to this. I wish I'd known all this when I was your age. You're so young and beautiful and, full of life. And here's this old dame, Archie and Mahitable. I don't know, you're too young to know that poetry, but they have an expression in there. There's a dance or two in the old dame yet. And I like to think of myself as still having a dance or two in me.
Yes.
So that is one side of the purpose coin. The other side is leaving the world in a better place. Service.
Yes. So many people, their sense of purpose is tied to what they do for a living.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's a very common crisis when we retire or do something different. So you found yourself in that situation.
Oh, yes.
So how did you redefine your purpose or discover your purpose?
Well, just as I say, I just kind of stumbled along bit by bit and letting go of this and letting go of that. And I did start with physical self-care. And that is that if we do nothing more, if we get nothing more out of my book, that part of it is crucial. We give over all our power and we think, just give me a pill and I can sit here in front of the TV. Diet, and it's simple. Diet, movement, not even necessarily exercise, but movement, keep going. Breathing. We get not once in all of the doctors I've ever gone to has anyone ever mentioned the healing power of breathing. And it is enormously powerful.
Do you have a favorite practice when it comes to breathing?
I do all different things. I'm certainly not an expert, and I try different traditional, ancient forms of breathing. I don't think it's about the form. I think we have too much attention on that. I think it's about that's where we can release our mind from what I call the monkey chatter. Well, I must do this and I must do that, and why didn't I say that when he said that, and all that kind of crap that fills our mind and confuses us. So when you stop, even if it's 5 minutes a day, I won't say 5 minutes a day. I say 5 minutes at a time, and just stop and think about your breath and feel the breath. And yes, there are techniques and strategies. The YouTube is full of suggestions for that. So I do have some in my book where I talk about specific ones that have helped me. But it's like meditation. There's no one way of doing it. There's no right or wrong. You can't say, oh, maybe I'm doing this wrong. The one thing that is crucial, though, is that it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And with
So
whether
no
you're
instant gratification.
no, you have to give it. And it's like people say to me, oh, well, I tried massage. It didn't help me at all. Well, how many times did you go? Well, I went twice. Well, you might have to go 20 times.
Right.
Um,
So patience.
yeah, healing takes the time that it needs.
So you mentioned you're doing a supplement to your book with actionable steps. So why is that so important to have those actions?
Well, I think that if we don't have some guidance on that, I started it off with a gratitude journal, because that is, again, the physical part, the self-care physical, and then the self-care emotional is where I bring in gratitude to help. Everything to do with healing starts in the mind. What we think we do, and what we think we become.
Yeah, and that's true.
So
They've actually proven that
yes,
you
they
can
have.
make yourself sick.
And there's so much evidence coming out, but we don't hear about it. On energy, we are beings. I don't even. If I start talking about energy healing, we're here for 2 days. But the energy that we share with the universe, and the only way to really bring the power of energy into our being is when we connect that deepest part of ourselves through meditation, through journal writing, through reflection, with this magnificent energy that keeps the universe going.
Wonderful. So we're almost out of time. Can you tell our listeners how they can find out more about you and how they can get your book?
Well, yes, I have a beautiful website, and on that website, well, my book is available on Amazon, and you've given the title of it,
Yes.
Healing from the Inside, Living Fully as You Age. My website is simply SusanneEden.com, SUSANNE, another E for Eden, EDEN. So SusanneEden.com. And on that website, we have blogs like this one are on there. You can have access to articles that I've written for magazines and for publications, both digital and traditional. And I have some beautiful, starting a collection of videos called Conversations with Susanne. And my very first one is with a close friend who was in her last days with stage 4 cancer, talking about her journey. And I've just completed this past week a follow-up to that, the final journey from a caregiver's perspective.
Wow, that sounds very powerful.
So all of that is available on, and I welcome people to email me. You have my email, I think,
Yes.
obviously, because I've got things from you. But I hope that your listeners will have the courage to look inward and forward. And I guess I want to leave with just one thing to in this time when there seems so much, fear is the